Hi, and welcome to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money, and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson from OTG Capital. We are proudly sponsored by OTG Capital, a private credit wholesale investment fund. We go locally around Radio Northern Beaches here up on sunny area of Sydney. And we also go around Australia on the Community Radio Network, complements the Community Broadcasting Association of Australia. This week, I'm really pleased to welcome a new person to the microphone and screen, and she is from MetLife, Lina Saliba. She is the Chief Marketing Person for Customer and Communications, and I probably totally mucked up that title, but I know, Lina, you'll fix that up. And Lina, I'm really pleased to actually have MetLife on the show because I've met one of your corporate officers on many occasions, Nathan Rees, at our association, the Association of Independent Financial Professionals. It's such a mouthful, but Nathan is a regular there, and we've been talking about getting MetLife on the show for a long time. And one thing that really piqued my interest was this thing about menopause. So, ladies and gentlemen, Lina is here to talk to us today about a program and a pilot program that MetLife is running around menopause. So, Lina, welcome to Dollars and Making Sense.
Thank you so much, Ray, and we're really excited to have this opportunity to talk to you and you know your listeners. It's a really exciting topic, so I'm glad you're interested in it. And you did actually get my title right; you nailed it. So well done. It is a mouthful. I might just talk a little bit before I talk about what we've done, a little bit about my role at MetLife, because I realise, not everybody knows who we are, but I get the joy of working on things that I really love. So my role covers things like obviously marketing. So what are we actually saying out in the market? But I also get to work on things like customer experience. So, when people actually engage with us, how do we make sure it's a really good experience? And, we do things like capture feedback. And so we're always looking at how can we make it better. We look at research, which is where this menopause piece really came from. It was, the research we had been doing highlighted for us that there's something there, that there's a gap and we can actually do something about it. I spend a lot of time thinking about, well, what are Australians actually, or, working Australians, what's important to them, and how do we help them create a secure future, not only from a financial perspective, but from a well-being perspective. So that's where menopause really played in. So that's a little bit about me and my role. I'm going to assume you know a little bit about MetLife. We're a life insurer in Australia. We work predominantly with super funds. So you might not even know that you're a MetLife customer because your super fund partners with us and your life insurance is available through your super fund. But we also work with, brokers and employers and financial advisors in general. Even though you might not know us in Australia, you might know of MetLife Global, especially with the World Cup at the moment. And, our stadium being used in New York. But, we've been around for a long time. And, one of the unique things about us is I get the opportunity to work with my counterparts in other countries. So we leverage a lot of that capability globally. But we were first with the menopause research and the support.
And I guess I follow baseball quite a lot. I used to travel to the United States quite a lot, and MetLife is a very big brand, primarily in the United States. In the past, they've used Charlie Brown, I think it was at one time. But anyway, MetLife Stadium is well known to people that follow various sporting codes in the United States. So I guess from that perspective, you don't have as much a retail look and feel, but as you rightly say, you are there in a big way in corporate Australia, primarily through superannuation. So ladies and gentlemen, MetLife, if you're not sure, metlife.com, it's pretty easy. You can look at them in that regard. And the impacts of menopause on women's health and wealth is a MetLife 360 health article that is on your website as well, which I'm actually looking at right now. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted, Lina, you to come on the show and talk about this is that we have featured a lot of women's issues on Dollars and Making Sense. And the primary reason is you are 50% of the population, funnily enough, roughly in this country. Thank goodness. But I guess when it comes to health and attention to health issues, you don't tend to get the right share of attention. And I have previously worked with women in highlighting the cause of endometriosis and breast cancer. And again, these are very common afflictions that women have to suffer, but because men are still the dominating medical practitioners, they don't tend to get the kind of attention that they should. And in menopause, I guess it's one of those things that, having looked at the study, let's talk a little bit about that study first off, Lina. Why did you commission the study, and what were the key takeaways?
Yeah, really, really good question. So, we're not pretending or claiming to be the menopause experts. There are many, many medical experts that understand that. But, one of our goals as an organisation is to make sure that working Australians have the right level of insurance at their particular stage in life, but also that they're secure as they work towards their retirement. So we all know we have our superannuation, and that's meant to make sure that when we retire, we've got enough money to live comfortably, whatever that looks like. We do research every 2 years. We do the MetLife Employee Benefits Trends Study, so EBTS. And what we started to see through that, plus some other data, was that women had a smaller, and I'm generalizing, women had a smaller bucket of money in their superannuation than males at roughly the same age. So we started to look a little bit deeper on why is that happening. Now, there's a number of reasons that would happen, but one of the key things we found was that the impact menopause was having on women meant that they actually left the workforce early, or they cut back their hours, or they didn't progress their career. And so we saw that they had less money. And so we thought, we've got to dig a little bit deeper. And so what does that look like? So we commissioned a specific piece of research, and we're proud to say it's one of the biggest pieces of research that's done in the life insurance industry around menopause. But we looked at, well, how do we actually get a good subset or a good view on what is actually happening? So we spoke to over 1,000 working Australians, and this included 382 women 40 and over, and 194 of those actually experienced perimenopause or menopause in the last 12 months. So that was part of our overall EBTS. Then we looked at some really in-depth interviews. And so we did 10 in-depth interviews with women aged between 44 and 58. And that gave us, some of those stories were amazing. It was, as a woman, I had no idea that other women were actually experiencing this. Some of the stories we heard were so horrific. Things like, if a woman said, look, I'm really struggling, she would be told, well, just suck it up, love, and get on with it. And this is verbatim on what women were telling us. Yeah. And so when we did that in-depth interviews, we really thought that there was something to look at brought up. So then we did another piece of research. We did an online survey that 1,000 women completed, and it reinforced the same thing, that women were experiencing this very challenging time in their life, and they weren't being supported in the workplace. And then they had to make decisions about their career, where, if you fast forward, meant that they had less money in their superannuation. So when it came time to retire, they didn't feel like they had the financial security that, most men were feeling that they had. So it was very interesting to us, as every time we went into the next layer of detail, we found out new things that surprised us. Personally, for me, made me a little bit sad, but really drove us to, well, what could we do in this space? We're a life insurer, we work with super funds, we've got the opportunity to work with employers. How could we actually make a difference? So we used all of that data to build the offer in 360 Health.
So I guess from that perspective, your story's not new, because I've had a number of female professionals in the finance industry, financial planners, chartered accountants, and also counsellors, money counsellors, that have come on the show and talked about unfortunately not unique experiences that women face, and the gender gap, the super gender gap, is very real. And we've done a couple of shows recently because of the changes in what's going on with superannuation at this point in time. Okay, so Lina, one of the things that we've been doing on Dollars and Making Sense is featuring a number of female financial planners, chartered accountants, and similar professionals, money counsellors. And we've just recently done a couple of shows on the super pay gender gap. And many reasons have been brought forward, and stopping to have children is one of those. But one of the interesting things is that menopause and perimenopause did not come up necessarily as a major factor, but having a look at the study results, you'd have to say that that's not really the case, that actually there are some fairly large numbers that menopause impacts in this pay gender gap. Is that what you found in the study as well?
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on. And our goal has always been, how do you keep, when we were thinking about this study, it was like, how do you keep women connected to work as long as they want to? So, we're all going to make a choice based on what's right for us. But what we were looking at was some women actually didn't have that choice. They were forced out. So some of the data that we found was 1 in 3 women told us that they believe menopause impacted their overall career and earning capacity. So when you think about it that way, if it's impacting my earning capacity, then I've got less money going to my super. So just over 30% of women told us that that's what they felt had happened to them. Mm-hmm. ABS data tells us that there's more women in the workforce than ever. That's fantastic. We all know that that's great, from a diversity perspective. But we also look at, women, we've seen an increase of women in leadership roles. So it's 42% of women between the age of 45 and 54 are starting to get to a leadership role. So that's when your earning capacity is increasing. But that's exactly the time where menopause or perimenopause starts to hit you. So what we heard from women was, I'm dealing with all these symptoms. I'm dealing with the brain fog. I'm dealing with the sweats. I'm dealing with all these other things. So I don't feel like I can perform. And so it's such a tricky situation. It's like I'm getting to that point in my career where I'm progressing, which means I earn more, which means I have more in my super. I'm being hit with all these symptoms and I'm feeling like I can't do the job anymore. So women clearly told us that. I started to doubt my own ability. I started to look at, well, maybe I'm not meant to do this job. It was just fascinating. So when we think of the gender the gap, I think this has a lot to do with it because we are contributing less. Women are saying that. Women also told us, I actually changed careers completely. I went from something that was paying a lot to something that was because I just couldn't manage it. So I think all of these contribute.
Okay, so we're just about half time here on Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson, and with me at the microphone is Lina Saliba, and she is the Chief Marketing and Customer Experience Officer with MetLife. We're going to take a short break and we'll be back with you in just a moment. Hi, and thank you for listening to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly radio program about finance, money and investing on Radio Northern Beaches and nationally on the Community Radio Network around Australia. The views, comments and opinions aired during our program should not be construed or viewed as financial advice. Any commentary is general advice only and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation or needs. You should consider whether the advice is suitable for you and your personal circumstances. If in doubt, you should contact an authorised licensed financial planner. We welcome questions and feedback, and you can get in touch with us via our blog, social media channels or email. Please search for Dollars and Making Sense in your favourite podcast platform or check out our blog at otgcapital.com.au/blog. Hi, and welcome back to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson. I'm really pleased to have a new speaker at the helm this week from MetLife. Her name is Lina Saliba, and she is the Chief Marketing and Customer Officer for MetLife. And for those of you that don't know who MetLife is a very, very large US life company. They have global exposure, and here primarily in Australia, you may not necessarily see that brand around a lot, but they are big in the superannuation area in providing life insurance and general cover. And today we have Lina on talking about menopause. Now, why are we talking about menopause? We've had a lot of shows about pay gender gap here on Dollars and Making Sense because I'm a big champion for making sure that women and superannuation balances are balanced because, we're all getting to that time when we need to be looking at this. And Lina, you were explaining before we went to the break that menopause and perimenopause ends up really putting a bit of a stifler on many women at very crucial points of their career development. And what kind of numbers did the study that MetLife conducted, what kind of numbers did it show was having an impact?
So we found that it was roughly, an approximate $40,000 difference for women in their superannuation. So that's a significant amount of money that they don't have access to. So that was research that was completed by us, but also we used research. ABS research and ASFA had completed some research. So about 40,000.
Yeah, and it may sound a trivial amount, ladies and gentlemen, when you think about, people branding around a number that, for a couple to retire, they're going to need about 1.5, 2 million. And again, depending on, your level of comfort, that's always a very personal thing. 40,000 doesn't sound a lot. But if we keep on harping back to the whole aspect of superannuation and what Paul Keating said back in the day when, he championed this, it's all about compounding, and $40,000 at a certain life stage can have a huge impact later on. Now, I want to move on a little bit, Lina. One of the things I have very personal experience around this. My own wife went through early menopause brought on by bowel cancer and chemotherapy, radiotherapy that she ended up on HRT. And I've got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, menopause is not a solitary experience. If the woman that is going through this has a family around her, everybody gets impacted. Now, Lina, what were the kind of things that your research found in overall impact, not just personally, because that's obviously important, but people around, what did you find in the study?
Yeah, well, I mean, you are spot on, and I'm sorry your wife had to go through that. That doesn't sound good at all. But what we found is women told us it impacted every aspect of their life. So they told us it impacted their desire to socialize, their desire to actually go out. It impacted how they interacted with their family members, their partners, their children, whoever was in their family ecosystem. I don't want to, it sounds a bit strong to say that it derailed things, but there was not one aspect of their life that didn't impact. And at the end of the day, they didn't know what to do about it. It actually felt like that it was out of control. And what was really interesting to me was some women said, I didn't even know what was happening. I actually thought I was going crazy. I thought I was losing my mind.
Wow.
And it's really confronting to see that, we're all, very educated and we've got access to this information, but women told us, I had no idea. And then what made it even worse for me was some women said to us, I went to my GP and I actually felt gaslit. I felt like they didn't know. And, described antidepressants. And so there was nobody who really understood what I was going through and help me through it.
And I got to tell you, the stories are consistent. And again, the reason I have female professionals coming on talking about this is because it's not just the lived experience. It's also that, and naturally, women feel far more empowered talking to other women about an issue that men can never possibly understand. And as a man, I watched my own wife go through it, but I couldn't comprehend what was going on. All I could do was be there and be as supportive as I possibly could. But one of the things that I want to talk about now is that as a result of the studies that you've done at MetLife, you've got a program called what is it?
Menopause support.
360 Health, is it? 360 Health.
Yep.
Okay. Now,
Yep.
There's a pilot program that MetLife's looking at around menopause and perimenopause. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about that pilot program?
Sure. We've actually rolled it out. It's we piloted it just over 12 months ago and it's been really successful. But let me just take a step back. So 360 Health is a number of services and, it's like nutritional services, exercise services, it's a bundle. We added menopause support to that bundle. And so menopause support is all about how do you provide access to a nurse who understands what menopause is to help me have a personalized conversation and provide me feedback or guidance on what can I do and what are my options. Now, we created this based on all of the research, and when we did the research, we actually asked women, well, what would you actually want in a service? What would that look like?
My God. Are you telling me you actually listened to a customer?
Well, remember, I've got customer experience in my remember that. So yes, we did. So that's one thing I'm really proud of, that when we build any of these services, we always build them with the customer in mind, and we will ask. I might have a view, you might have a view, but we do ask, well, what do you actually think will work? Because I never want to build it and assume that they will come. So when we built this, we actually did we even asked women, what do you want it to be called? Like, what should it be called? Because we're not replacing, a GP or a specialist, but what do you actually want the service to be called? What one was menopause support. And so basically the way menopause support works is you engage through us digitally, you book an appointment with a nurse, and that nurse will just talk to you about what is happening with you. They can't prescribe you medication, but they can guide you on who can you go and see and what questions should you be asking. And, when we built this, I remember talking to a friend of mine, and she said to me, my GP doesn't get it. So I go on Facebook, there's a group of women, and they all advise me on what I should do. And it really, we started to hear that more and more often. And so we wanted to build something where, we're not taking away from the conversation you can have with your girlfriends or with anyone else, but how do you talk to somebody who has the medical training to be able to provide some guidance and reassure you that you're not going crazy? This is completely normal, unfortunate, but normal.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that really stuck in my reading when I was doing background reading for this interview, I really liked reading about, and I'm quoting from your study results, people who take control of their health. Okay, now this is what really you're empowering women going through this to do, aren't you?
Absolutely. And I said earlier we want people to stay connected to work, but if I just elaborate on that, it's stay connected to work for as long as you want to. So, we don't want women to feel like, well, I've got no decision, no choice. I'm going to have to leave the workforce because of my menopause or perimenopause symptoms. We just want to give them an option to make an informed decision, just like everybody else. We get to choose when we leave. So this service is really about empowering them to get the support they need so they can stay if they want to stay, they can leave if they want to leave, whatever works for them. And that's the crux of the whole 360 program. But for this one, it is specifically for all the women who are going through that challenging time in their life. And actually, I should say, even though we're targeted women, what we have found, and it's interesting to hear your view of what you're going through with your wife, because what we found is there's some men who are using the service, and they're using it as a way to understand a little bit better what their partners are going through, or women in their lives, or people they work with, and to really get behind it and then think about, well, how can they support and what does it actually mean? So I've got to be honest, I didn't anticipate, that didn't come through in our research, but it's been a nice surprise that it has appealed to more than women going through it. I mean, we had, one example that come to my mind, we had a gentleman user who actually used one of the other 360 services, got referred to this one and used the service. And the feedback he gave us was, I'm now understanding what's happening in my home, why this is, the impact it's having on me, my children, and what my wife is going through. And I mean, that makes me feel good because I think we've actually provided something that makes a difference to people's lives. So I'm excited by that and I'm really proud of it.
I think you should be too, because I think one of the biggest lessons that many men can take on board is simply listening, being a better listener and understanding, not necessarily having men can never empathize what it's like to go through menopause or, periods or anything like that, because we're not women. But I think being able to listen very carefully and also, for example, be part of a program that then enables information and empowerment, I think is very, very valuable. Now, as we wrap up the show, one of the things I wanted to do is maybe talk about some key takeaways, and where would listeners go to get more information?
Absolutely. If you go to metlife.com 360 Health, you'll find details of the menopause service and our research. To be able to access the menopause support, you do need to be a client of MetLife. So you could be with us through a super fund. Although if a family member is a customer of MetLife, you also get access to the services. So we've extended 360 to beyond just our own customers.
So I guess the first question, though, is to actually ask the question.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I must say, Lina, today, like always, it's been a real revelation for me. The thing I love about doing this radio show is I keep learning. Every day I wake up, I learn something new. And I guess the other factor that you have a cross intersection of paths is that around perimenopause and menopause, a lot of women are going through very stressful times in marriages. It also happens to be around peak time when they get divorced and kids are leaving home, and a whole bunch of stuff is happening. I've had many discussions with many women on this radio show over the past 3 or 4 years, and it's a confluence of events that's like, wow, there's a lot going on. Lina, thank you for being on the show. I know we're going to have you back on very shortly to talk about some other aspects of MetLife, but I think it's been really informative, and thank you for being part of Dollars and Making Sense.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Ray. I appreciate it. And I should qualify, because we talked about that we're a global organisation. It's metlife.com.au. I missed that, just in case somebody, we are global, but yes, if you go to the AU one, that's where the information will be. But thank you for the opportunity. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. And until next time, it's adios.